Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction was a 1970s American black-and-white science fiction comics magazine published by Marvel Comics' parent company, Magazine Management. The anthology title featured original stories and literary adaptations by writers and artists, including Frank Brunner, Howard Chaykin, Gene Colan, Gerry Conway, Richard Corben, Bruce Jones, Gray Morrow, Denny O'Neil, Roy Thomas, and others, as well as non-fiction articles about science fiction and interviews with such authors as Alfred Bester, Frank Herbert, Larry Niven, and A. E. Van Vogt, some of whom had their works adapted here. Publication history. The black-and-white science fiction comics magazine Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction ran 6 bi-monthly issues. Cover dated Jan, November, 1975. +1 annual publication. Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction Giant Size Special No. 1. 1976. It was published by Magazine Management, at the time the parent company of Marvel Comics, and was cover-branded with the logo of its distributor, Curtis Circulation, utilizing many Marvel writers and artists, as well as other creators. It was launched following the cancellation of Marvel's 1973-74 comic book SF anthology Worlds Unknown. A framing device throughout the series featured an old curio dealer who presented his shop's visitors with dramas captured in slow glass, a concept that series editor Roy Thomas and writer Tony Isabella credited in the magazine to writer Bob Shaw. Premiere. The premiere issue featured both new material and a number of reprints from fanzines and alternative comics of the era. Writer-artist Neil Adams's A View from Without quote from Phase No. 1, 1971. Smash Gordon in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Mongo by writer-artist Frank Brunner. From Heritage No. 1A, 1972. Savage World by writer Wally Wood. Pencilers Alma Williamson, Angelo Torres, and Roy Krenkel, and inkers Williamson, Torres, and Frank Fraser. From Whitson No. 1, 1966. And Hey Buddy, Can You Lend Me a quote by writer-artist Michael Kaluta. From Scream Door. Asian Flu. No. 1, 1971. In addition to slow glass sequences by writer Isabella and penciler Gene Colan. Original material included Part 1 of a 2-issue adaptation of John Wyndham's novel The Day of the Triffids, by writer Gerry Conway and penciler Ross Andrew, and an adaptation by Isabella and Colan of Shaw's original slow glass short story, Light of Other Days. Comics historian Richard J. Arndt believes the Triffids adaptation was originally scheduled for Worlds Unknown No. 7 to 8. The final issues, which had instead deviated from SF adaptations to adapt the contemporaneous film The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, 1974. Arndt also notes, the Savage World stories art was done in 1954 for Buster Crabbe Comics, but it was unused. In 1966 Wally Wood wrote a new script. The original had been lost. For the artwork. Quote, Subsequent issues featured the original stories, War Toy, by Isabella and penciler George Perez. Issue No. 2, Gestation. No. 3, Kick the Can. No. 4, and Old Soldier. No. 6. All by writer-artist Bruce Jones. Encounter at War, by Jan Stranad and Richard Corben. No. 4. Paradise Found, by writer Jones and artist Gray Morrow. And Addict, by writer Don Glutt and artist Virgilio Redondo. Both No. 5. Mind Games, by writer-artist John Allison. And Visitation, by Glutt and Ruben Yandok. Both No. 6. Thomas succeeded Isabella as framing sequence writer with the last 2 issues. Additionally, the magazine reprinted a handful more stories from fanzine and alternative comics, such as Kaluta's The Hunter and the Hunted, number 2, From Abyss number 1, November 1970, and Allison's Half-Life, number 5, from the Canadian publication Orb number 2, 1974. Adaptations included Alfred Bester's Adam and Eve, by writer Denny O'Neil and penciler Jim Mooney, number 2. Frank Herbert's Occupation Force, by Conway and penciler Perez. Larry Niven's Not Long Before the End, by writer Doug Moench and artist Vicente Alcazar. And Harlan Ellison's Repent, Harlequin, Said the TikTokman, by writer Roy Thomas and artist Alex Nino. All number 3. A. E. Van Vogt's The Enchanted Village, by writers Don and Maggie Thompson and artist Dick Giordano. Otis Adalbert Klein's A Vision of Venus, by writer-artist Tim Conrad. And Robert Silverberg's Good News from the Vatican, by Conway and artist Adrian Gonzalez under the pen name Adding Gonzalez. All number 4. Larry Niven's All the Myriad Ways, by writer-artist Howard Chaykin, number 5. And Michael Moorcock's novel Behold the Man, by Moench and Nino. Interviews with Bester, Herbert, Niven, and Van Vogt appeared in issues containing their respective adaptations. A planned adaptation of Robert Blocher's A Toy for Juliet, promised in the letters page of issue number 3, did not materialize here, although it was eventually adapted by Rick Geary for an independent comic in the mid-1980s. Cover artists included Brunner, Frank Kelly Frears, Michael Kaluta, Michael Whelan, and Sebastian Boada, pseudonymously under one of his middle names, Puig Domenic. Annual publication: The Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction Giant Size Special Issue Number 1. Cover dated simply 1976. Contained the original stories, Journey's End, by writer Bruce Jones, and artist Alex Nino. The Forest for the Trees, by Jones, and artist Vicente Alcazar. Preservation of the Species, by Jones and the Mononon credit Redondo. Either Virgilio Redondo or his brother and frequent Marvel contributor Nestor Redondo is uncertain. Cleat, by writer-artist Jones. Sinner, by writer-artist Archie Goodwin. Reprinted from Whitsun number 1, July 1966. And Threads, by Matt Warwick and Gonzalez. Glut and Yandok adapted Stanley G. Weinbaum's A Martian Odyssey. Don Newton painted the cover. The annual also featured an interview with Theodore Sturgeon, and a reprint, from Worlds Unknown number 4, of Conway and John Buscema's adaptation of Frederick Brown's Arena. Historian Arndt believes Threads, credited to writer Matt Warwick, may actually be by Mal Warwick, a fanzine and science fiction writer of the time. A writer named Matt Warwick published comic book science fiction in this mid-1970s time frame in Star Reach. Additionally, Threads was reprinted in the Marvel UK title Star Wars Weekly number 3, Feb. 1978, credited under yet another variant of the name, Matt Warwick. Editor Roy Thomas, in an editorial on page 4, dated September 1976, wrote that the series didn't quite succeed in selling the magic number of copies needed to sustain it. No, it didn't lose money. It didn't make quite enough profit to allow it to be continued. Still, in the meantime we had enough material on hand for 2 or 3 issues, counting a couple of finished scripts, as yet unillustrated, plus a couple of stories already totally completed. So, after many conferences, I received the go-ahead to put out a giant one-shot special. Quote, A column on page 95 of the special explains that the story, Man-Gods, planned for this issue and promoted on Marvel bullpen bulletins pages and elsewhere, had become lost by the U.S. Postal Service. The story, with art by Nino, is unrelated to Man-God, an adaptation of Philip Wiley's Ubermensch novel Gladiator, by Thomas and Tony DeZuniga, that appeared in the Marvel Curtis magazine Marvel Preview No. 9. Winter 1976. However, a 37-page story titled Man-Gods from Beyond the Stars, by co-plotter Thomas, writer Doug Moench and artist Nino, had by this time seen print in Marvel Preview No. 1, 1975. The column stated that the replacement for Man-Gods was the 4-page Goodwin story and the 15-page Arena reprint, Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction, 1975. At the unofficial Handbook of Marvel Comics Creators,